end of that, when that had been success, Dave sacked me. Born in 2012, and by 2017, 18, maybe we were up to 400 or 500 cars or something like that. Don't copy big brands, right? Because they're a big brand and you're a startup. Show patience, okay? Be realistic, right? Be realistic about what you can achieve. This is what I always say. We can't change the world, but we can change our world, right? Within these four walls, we can create a culture many times. I'm the only real foreign influence that's been constant in this place. This place has been built by Pakistanis, and Pakistanis have a lot of talent, okay?
Hey everyone, welcome to the second episode of C2O Unplugged. I'm Numan, recruitment specialist at C2O. Today we've got a really special guest, the visionary behind C2O and the brains behind multiple successful ventures, including 247 Cars, City Cars, and C2O Digital. Shahzad, how are we doing today?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
So before we dive into the podcast today, I really want to ask, you've returned to your hometown. How have you been feeling? And I believe you are to return back to England in a few days.
Yeah, look, I've been here for 3 months and it's been refreshing. I've got plenty done. I had a plan. I had about 20 items, shelved some things, but I've got most of what I wanted done. I was doing my checklist the other day and I've got most of what I wanted to get done. So yeah, I'm happy.
So diving into the first question, growing up in England must have had a major impact on the way you see the world. I'm really curious, and for our audience, could you share how living in the England and growing up there, how that impacted the way you see the world and the aspirations you've had over the time?
I mean, look, the one thing about the UK is, look, nothing is beyond your grasp, you know, so no one tells you you can't do this and you can't do that. So, you know, you don't have this, or that's not going to work for me, or that this is not going to work for me mentality. It's, you know, I can achieve anything I want. My father pushed me in the educational side, and perhaps maybe I wouldn't have pursued that as vigorously as I did if it wasn't for him. Didn't like it at times, but you know, I stuck at it, and he was right in the respect in respect of if you try and seek an education, it opens up avenues for you that wouldn't have opened up for you if you didn't. Look, in England, as a Pakistani or Pakistani heritage, life is a little bit different, okay, say to, you know, the rest of the population. Right. But I have seen massive changes over the course of my life. Things have changed for the better.
So talking about education, could you tell us about your early life as a teenager? Your education and what your aspirations were as a teen?
Yeah, I mean, I was like any other kid, you know, very big into football. Spent most of my childhood playing football. In fact, from early morning till night, we were out there on the fields and whatever else. There was no such thing as gaming or, you know, the other things that children have today. Went to the local primary school. My children go to that school as well now. I still live in the same street, virtually in the same house. Left the primary school with a decent education. This was before the national curriculum. Right. Teachers could teach what they wanted to in those days. Made a really good start to my life in my secondary school. You know, I went to a school called Manor Farm Comprehensive. My primary school was called Croft. You know, got 9 GCSEs, alhamdulillah, and then you know, I did 4 A-levels. I did have to repeat a year because getting 9 GCSEs made me a bit cocky, and that taught me a really harsh lesson, right? So obviously I resat, applied for university, got into a teacher training degree, and I graduated with a bachelor's with honours in education, so a B.Ed as it's called. And then I did a couple of years teaching in my hometown.
So, you know, people in high school, young people, they usually have dreams about what they want to be when they grow up. We've talked about your aspirations. How do you see that vision has evolved over time? How did they change? Did you know what you wanted to do? Did you want to start this business when you were young? or did that change and got evolved over time?
When I was a kid, I didn't think about any of these things. Even when I was 18, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, to be fair. And I'm, as I've got older, I don't do that as much. But when I was younger, I was very, how would you put it? I'd just do something because I thought, oh, that's a good idea, I'll do that. Yeah, you know, when you're younger, you don't have the patience to sort of stick at something, and then you do this and you try that. And even when I decided to become a teacher, there wasn't any deep thought that went into it. I think the biggest inspiration for that was I really got on with my physical education teachers. It's PE, which is physical education was my main subject. English was my second subject, and I got on very well with those two sets of teachers within my secondary school. So I suppose your teachers influence you. Business-wise, nothing at all. Nothing, never ever thought about business or opening a business, nothing. So that's something that evolved later on in my life.
Right. So when you're in England, what is the thing you miss the most about Pakistan, and how do you see that impacting the way you make business decisions?
Look, there's a few things. I mean, nowadays, what I'll miss is the adhan, yeah, that you can hear from morning till the evening. But also the weather. Obviously in the summer it's really harsh. It's the first time I've really come here during this time of year, and the weather's been fantastic. So that's something I'll miss. Having space. It's far more. My life is far more without distraction. While I'm in Pakistan, I can stay very focused in what I'm doing. But I mean, those are the few things that I'll miss. The people, of course. You know, I've got a very close bond with many people here in Pakistan now, especially the management. So yeah, those are the few things I'll miss.
Okay, so since you are from here originally, how does that affect you being in England now, the way you do business?
Oh, right. Okay. Right. Now I get what you mean now. Yeah. I mean, look, my Pakistani experience has fundamentally changed me as a person. It's been a progressive thing. It doesn't just come and smack you in the mouth. It happens over a period of time, and it is gradual. So, for instance, the things I take for granted in England, you can't take for granted here. Even like the ground that you walk on, you have to watch where you're stepping, right? In Pakistan. So it makes you appreciate. When I'm in England, it makes you appreciate the stability that exists in the UK. But then obviously there are things here that I find better than in the UK. So, it's when you mix the two things together, as a Muslim and as someone with obviously a dual background, it's molded me into what I believe is the final version of me. Yeah. And I believe I'm a more natural sort of, my natural behavior comes out now. And I think if the Pakistani thing hadn't happened, I probably wouldn't have found myself in the way that I have.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about your incredible journey as an entrepreneur. How old were you when you first started your project, and what was the inspiration behind building a business in Pakistan?
I mean, look, I was a teacher up until 2002. And, in 1998, my family bought a taxi business in the West Midlands. And obviously, once you get a family business, it sort of takes over the family life, as it were. I was still doing my degree when we bought that business. And I graduated, I think I was 23 when I graduated in 2000, taught for a couple of years. And then I resigned from that job in 2002. And we set about opening up a different arm to the taxi company, a coach company. And that finally opened in 2003 with a couple of minibuses. And that grew very quickly to a very large bus company. By the time, I think, 2009 came along, sort of 6 years, the turnover was about £7-8 million a year. So, I mean, look, I was still, in my head, a kid. Yeah, I couldn't believe what was happening. But obviously, because of lack of experience and what have you, I learned a lot of lessons. And in fact, even today, that experience still guides a lot of what I do and what I won't do, more importantly, because you know, it was a very, very intensive, short experience.
Shedding some more light on again, your business journey you've had, what was it in specific that made you want to start something here in Pakistan, though? You've had successes.
Yeah. So I mean, after 2009, that business closed, and I took a job with someone in the head office was in Stoke, but basically Dave Reeves, his name was, and I worked for him for about 18 months. I learned a lot about humility and how to treat people from Dave, and unfortunately he's no longer with us. But after about 18 months, we turned that company around because it was loss making when I arrived there. I'm not saying for a second that was all down to me. It was a team effort. But, obviously my presence there was noted, and we turned it completely around. It was from where it went to the opposite end of the trajectory. Obviously at the end of that, when that had been success, Dave sacked me. So I sat there and thought, oh God, I've been sacked. What am I going to do now? But actually, do you know what? One thing I have in me is I don't deliberately go set about trying to make enemies for myself. Dave and me became very good friends, okay, over the years, and we carried on. He used to come down from Stoke, even after I left, 2-3 times a year. We used to take lunch, have tea. And he continued to, I suppose, be a type of mentor for me. And I think he liked me very much. So, that was I mean, I've spent a little bit of time talking about that because that was a transition, segue period in my life. And at the end of that, I thought, what am I going to do now? So I thought, no taxis. So I opened up, I bought a taxi company. It was a little taxi company. And we grew that. And to cut a long story short, 247, I think, was born in 2012. And by 2017, 18, maybe we were up to 400 or 500 cars or something like that. So 2017, something happened at work. I'm not going to get into the ins and outs of what happened, but I was very, very disillusioned with the type of workforce we were getting in the office. So obviously I knew I could come to Pakistan, and I'd heard great things about the outsourcing market. So I came here it was in 2015 and 16. I came here twice to do a bit of reconnaissance. I didn't act, but then in 2017, I came along, and my idea was only just to produce some staff for the taxi company. But obviously one thing led to another, and, it's grown into, pretty large company that it is today from that point.
Right, so getting to that point, from its inception to where it is today, C2o being one of the leading companies in the BPO industry, could you shed some light on some of the major wins you've had, some of the major challenges you faced, just building this to what it is today?
Yeah, the biggest problem is the cultural difference. So if being an overseas Pakistani, obviously I grew up in the UK. My mentality is still very UK. I came here with a preconception of what Pakistan is and how to behave. And I quickly realized that, that isn't right. So it was a lot of trial and error to get to where we wanted to. Free running, there was no real departments. I relied on one person, that sort of typical new startup. Tried one manager, did it myself. And then in 2019, just before COVID, we decided to try something else. So we found a system called EOS, which is just basically a management system that makes you think about what you're doing and progress according to developing your culture. And that's where we are today, in fact.
Right. So how did you navigate those major cultural challenges? You've mentioned that you had trouble working with people here, but how did you actually get to solve those problems culturally, since this company has seen major wins over the time that I've been here as well? So what was it in particular?
Very, very simple. Before we made the changes that I've just talked about, the vision was always in my head. And I never used to really bother telling anyone, right? Because I didn't know I had to. So I'd do things on impulse. I'd just, as I mentioned earlier on, as a child, I'd just do something on impulse. It made me think. So today we have 8 questions, right, that we have on one piece of paper that's double-sided. So first 5 questions are: what's our mission? What are we trying to do here? What are our values, right? So we have a set of core values. What's our marketing strategy? So how are we going to, present ourselves to the world? Right. We have a 10-year target, right? It's what we call a big, audacious goal. That probably people will laugh at us when they read it, but we have one of those. So we think, in 10 years, this is where we want to be. And then the last question on the first page is the 3-year plan. So what will it look like in 3 years' time? And when you turn over the page, you have what's happening this year. So you have the 1-year plan. And then you have all the issues you can't solve in the present. And the present is defined by a quarter. Yeah, so it can't be solved in the present quarter, Q1, Q2, whatever. I think, what are we in now? I think we're in Q1. No, we're in Q4. Don't know where we are. So, yeah, we're in Q4 at the moment. If it can't be solved in Q4, it's shelved and put onto long-term issues to be discussed later on. So, that makes a big difference. And finally, you have what we call rocks. So rocks are bite-sized pieces that help us deliver the objectives. And that brings me nicely onto the fact that we have a yearly meeting called the annual. It takes 2 days, and we actually write down what we want to achieve, so we can actually tell whether we've, whatever we wanted to do, did we actually deliver that at the end of the year? Yeah.
Navigating through those challenges, you must have had a lot of insight, solving many problems and also struggling to solve some. As someone who is also interested in building something in the future, what advice would you have for young people, particularly, who are interested in building something of their own? What is the thing or things that you would tell them to look out for?
Absolutely. First of all, don't copy big brands, right? Because they're a big brand and you're a startup. Show patience. Okay, be realistic. Right? Be realistic about what you can achieve. Write down what you hope that it will look like in 12 months' time, and in 3 years' time, and in 10 years' time. In fact, the advice for some young person is exactly what we do today. It took me years and years of messing around and trying this and trying that to get to that. And main thing is, whoever you get involved with, if you do it on your own, that's fine. This doesn't apply. But if you get involved with somebody else, make sure there is accountability. Make sure you know whose job is what and who's allowed to give an order about a particular subject. And also, finally, if you hire someone, hire people who are better than you, right? And be prepared to be told. Bury your ego deep in the ground. Yeah, these are the advices I would give to a youngster.
Right, so picking the BPO industry in particular in Pakistan, when you decided to bring that business in here, was there anything in particular that you saw as an advantage in this industry that you still see today? What is the thing that makes it unique here, that makes it lucrative to bringing outsourcing business?
Right, yeah. So Islamabad especially, I can't speak for any other city, although I hear good things about Lahore, and it's something we've got our, what we call a durbeen, our telescope is looking towards there. But in Islamabad, one, it's not totally, it's not the madness that this country is perceived to be, the rush and the noise and etc. Although it exists to some extent, the education is absolutely A1. I think every parent wants their child to be, well educated and do well for themselves. So the aspirations are high there. The level of English and the way that the accent can be neutralized or be tailored towards a particular market, that's the biggest thing. I mean, the biggest thing people will compare us to is India, obviously, because it's a neighboring country. What I find is Indian accents are very pronounced, An Islamabad accent is easily watered down, right? If you need it to be. And look, in the end, the only reason you have to do that, key point with BPO and answering phone calls, is the person on the other end of the phone has to be able to understand what you're saying, and you have to be able to understand them. So I would say that's the biggest thing that exists here that allows us to do what we do.
So how does C2O, like talking about that opportunistic, like just the ability to tap into this market, you talked about Islamabad, but other cities as well here. How does C2O, how do you see C2O playing into the future of this industry here? What impact do you think it is playing and it will be playing in the future?
Look, what I've always wanted is to create jobs. Initially, obviously, jobs here to service outside. We are now looking at creating jobs for within as well, within the borders. So there is plenty of opportunity for Urdu speakers as well, right? To do something here. We're in the middle, we're right at the back end of a massive refurb in this building. I mean, it's unrecognizable from what it was. We've extended it a little bit, and we've still got aspirations to grow larger in that respect. So we want to be, well, look, we can't change the world. This is what I always say. We can't change the world, but we can change our world, right? Within these four walls, we can create a culture. We can push the values, hire according to those values, and hopefully whoever's here wants to be here. And obviously, when there comes a point where they don't want to be here anymore, they can go, and everything always ends with a smile, right? And with decency and niceness. We try and push that a lot. Respect for your colleagues, for the environment that you work in, and for the world in general. So, you know, we want to be a beacon, you know, in the sense of that things can be achieved. And one biggest thing I'll say about this place, and I've said this before many times, I'm the only real foreign influence that's been constant in this place. This place has been built by Pakistanis, and Pakistanis have a lot of talent. Okay, however, at times it's very difficult for them. You know, a lot of people leave the country, and I say to our youngsters, look, there are opportunities here. You don't have to leave. You know, you can come in, you can carve yourself a thing, and underpinning all of that is the meritocracy. You know, our chief operating officer started off life as a CSR here, and now he's got the top job. So there's ample proof that you can, 50% of the supervision team were CSRs. So you can get promoted here. But what we are doing now is picking the people who have got the talent for that, and we spend 2 years. They'll be under a manager's wing, and they'll be training them on EOS and various other things. And they'll sink or swim with that. You know, they'll either think, oh, this is really good, I want to do this, or they'll think, this isn't really for me, and not do that. But main thing, I'll finish off with this, is it's all about them. And this is not some soundbite or a cliche. It is about the person involved. When we hire someone, we try and put them off not coming here, right? The questions we ask tries to put them off. Right. If they still like what they hear, they'll come and join us. And that is a good recipe for high retention and having a happy workforce. Okay, so I'm curious. I've noticed in you that whenever you speak to people in the company, when talking about their positives, you take it to an extreme in a way that makes me, it's good. I'm just very curious. What is it that makes you so sure that someone's got any particular set of positive attributes when perhaps you're not that aware of what they're actually like? I know some people that you think very highly of, and they've got great set of skills, but the ones that you think they have are likely not there, but you perceive them to be there. I'm just very curious. What is it that makes you... Right, look, I believe... and have you noticed that they almost always affirm to what you're saying, even when I know that they want to say no? Some people just go, oh yeah, of course I've got it. Like, I know what you mean, but they don't. Are you aware that's happening? But you can never be fully aware about what someone's thinking. I believe kindness, in the stage of life I'm at the moment, I believe that kindness is the best way. Anger gets you nowhere. It makes people hate you. So I can clearly define, right, what I do there. So I know what our values are. So I know, according to those, what they should be doing, okay? I also know what they're actually doing. And somewhere in between is the reality of things. So if they walk out the room and they've affirmed something to me, and I've sat there, they nodded to me and said, okay, and I've nodded to them, okay, I've got a reasonable handle as to what the reality of the situation is.
It has a positive impact on me personally when you say something that, hey, you know what I mean. Even when I don't, I know I'll figure it out. That has a positive impact on me. So I was just curious, is this something that you do knowing fully well that the person is likely not there yet, but they will because I have that pressure on them now? Is it something deliberate?
It is deliberate. I only do that to people who I think are very, very smart. Because if I tell you everything that I mean, that means that you don't have to think. And then I'm sort of indoctrinating you, and I don't want to do that. I want youngsters to think, what did he mean by that? And maybe they'll be thinking about that for the day, 2 days, whatever. And in fact, they may come up with a conclusion that was far better than I originally thought.
So I want to bring the conversation, before I do that, to your daily life. I'm curious as to the way you make decisions, the way I've gotten to know you. You talk a lot about data, and I feel like that's impacted the way I see life now, more so than any other. Oftentimes when someone wants to ask me why I think a certain way, I give them data or something to back it up. You talk a lot about data. Like, what is the data that you have to back up your claim? Where does that come from? That has had a positive impact on me, but I also see the weight of it on other people.
Right. Naturally, I'm very cynical. I don't believe anything unless I can actually see how that works. So I need evidence. And our evidence is normally data. Yeah. So the new weapon in the world is data. So weapons can be used as a force for good and a force for bad. Obviously, we only use them as a force for good. So if something's put in front of you with a degree of patience, I don't make impulsive decisions. That's the word I was thinking about earlier, and I was impulsive. Couldn't think of it. But if you do not look at what the reality on the ground is over a period of time, you invariably will make the wrong decision, or a decision that is damaging, in fact. Right? So data, very, very important, and it needs to be constantly coming. However, you've got to bullseye the right numbers.
That skepticism that you talked about, that you're cynical or skeptical, was that something that you inculcated in yourself over the years, or do you see yourself just naturally leaning towards being cynical in general? Or is that something you saw advantage in and were like, okay, perhaps something that I should adopt?
I didn't know I was cynical. I thought I was great, yeah, until people told me otherwise. And you get these personality tests. And the first time I did one of those tests, DISC, I think it's called, I was described as a cynic. I thought, well, that must be wrong. I'm not cynical. But eventually you begin to accept the fact that you are quite cynical.
Does that weigh people in just heavily around you, like having that sort of skepticism or cynicism? Do you think that, how do you balance that out?
You don't have to balance it. You basically, if you've got data and you know the reality on the ground, you know what your values are, you know what should be happening, you've hired the right people, you don't need to be cynical. You trust people. And trust gets rid of the cynicism, right? So if you've got a group of people, and constantly I still get told you can't trust it. Well, what do you mean? I do never lose faith in humanity. Alhamdulillah, never lose faith in humanity, because if you can't trust people, then you will be very miserable. And that is a major, major influence. If Shaz 1.0 and Shaz 2.0 is compared, I'm a much happier person now, because I've managed to, remove the cynicism to some extent for what I would call a ground reality, a certainty.
Right.
Yeah.
So, what does it take to convince Shahzad of a business decision? What do I need to give to you? What is the one thing that I could do that could change your mind?
You need to know what you are doing. Have you got the numbers? So if you bring something in front of me,
Okay.
if you don't know the numbers,
Anyone?
yeah, it's for anyone. I had a group come to me the other day. I think they were a group that did Amazon or something like this.
Okay.
Look, I realize that some of the people that are doing work, they're doing great work, but they probably have got some deficiency in the skill set, or they've never done that before. So, I tried to be nice to them, and I was nice to them, and I gave them some feedback at the end. And in fact, you know what? They had enough about them for me to want to meet them again. So, yeah, you need to know what you want, basically. So if you come to me for something, if you don't know what you want, then you can't expect me to guess.
Right. Okay. So clarity is very important.
Very, very important. You must be clear.
Good. Okay. So jumping back into now your daily life, super curious. How do you handle the demands of work? Building a business, running multiple companies, handling and dealing with a lot of people, pressure of work, but how do you manage that with your personal life? And how do you stay organized? I'm super curious.
Right. So, look, this is something I've managed to do over the last 20 years. It started with me wanting to do everything myself because I didn't trust anyone. It goes back to the trust. Bringing EOS in, bringing a system in place. Key point is the number one. And you might ask me, what does that mean? I really do respect the number one. So, number one means know why you exist. When you get up every day, you need to know why you exist. I know what my routine is every morning. I'm up at around 5 a.m. 95% of the world is still in bed.
Do you plan your day like this? Do you actually wake up and plan what you're going to do?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I use a diary, right? So, and my diary is now run by somebody else, okay? Right. So they drive me hard. I take plenty of rest. So I don't work myself to the bone anymore, but the 3 full days I work, they are long days and they are back-to-back stuff. I appreciate certain things. If I don't get enough rest overnight, I'm going to make bad decisions the next day. So my job is to make decisions, and so I need to be fresh when I make those decisions. And I always make those decisions in the morning. I rarely make a decision in the afternoon because I'm not so good in the afternoon. So the diary, very important. So certain things have to be in the diary at the same time, at the same place, with the same people every single week.
So you've said diary, and just for our audience who's not aware, how do you make that diary work for you? What do you mean? Do you have a physical notebook that you just write on, or how do you?
Yeah, look, I dumped all paper a few years ago, right? I've gone back to paper a little bit recently. I think it's got some uses, but the diary is cloud-based, and certain other people have got access to it, and obviously I add to it as well. Look, people are naturally lazy, and I'm no different, okay? So if I can get away with something, I will try. But when someone else is doing it, they will make the best use of your time, as long as you've briefed them correctly. So it works really well. 5 or 6 entities that I oversee. And the other thing is freedom, right? So whoever I've had a meeting with on Monday morning, for instance, they've got their to-dos, and I leave them to it. I don't ask them what time they clocked in, or what time they went home, or, I do ask them, have you had enough rest? Because you don't do good work if you haven't had a rest. So other thing with one is next step. So concentrate on the next step. Don't worry about the end goal.
Right.
Have it in mind, but don't get cluttered by the end goal. Make sure you just concentrate on the next step. And there are a few examples of how one governs my life.
Right. So talk about your hobbies, interests, things that people might not know about. What are some particular hobbies or things that you like to do that perhaps most people are not aware of?
Hobbies, football. I'm football mad. I have been since I was
Do you still play?
Yes, I do. I still do. I'm a goalkeeper. I've always been a goalkeeper. I play 5-a-side, not outside. Didn't grow tall enough to be an outdoor goalkeeper, but inside I still play at a reasonable standard. Alhamdulillah. So yeah, I play football. A lot of people may not realize I do that. I read stuff for the sake of reading stuff. Yeah, so I just learn things that I'm a very curious person. So I'd say my biggest hobby is finding things that I don't know about and finding out about them.
What is your favorite food to eat whenever you come back, return to Pakistan? What is the food that you like to eat?
I don't know really. I'm not really fussy, to be honest. I used to be very fussy when I was younger, when I was a kid. But as I've got older, I don't really complain about what I have. But I suppose there's a vegetable called karela, so I like that. Yeah, I'm not particularly a big fan of meat. So yeah. So if you're sharing meat with me, you're lucky because I won't have any. But stop short of being vegetarian. I'm not vegetarian. I'll eat meat, but I prefer veg. So any type of veg, really.
So we talked about this earlier in the podcast. Again, living in a foreign country, living in England, are there any specific business ethics practices that you believe would benefit this country, Pakistan, if we're brought in here? Are there anything in particular, any particular ethics?
Yeah, I mean, look, if justice was quicker, people say you can't get justice in Pakistan. You can get justice in Pakistan. It just takes a very long time, right? So that would be, if there was a confidence in that system, truthfulness. Sometimes you're more likely to be lied to in Pakistan than you are in the UK. Okay, or it's more pronounced. Okay, I'm not saying people don't lie in the UK. I'm sure they do, but you don't have to think about things so much in the UK. You have to think about things a great deal more here. But that doesn't mean to say, people say stuff about different nations. I believe, and I've seen it, 90% of people are good. Sometimes their behaviors are motivated by the position they're in. Okay, so we don't judge. I've got this clear thing. I'd never think I'm better than somebody else. Right? Try and keep that in my head. That don't judge people.
Any business practice in particular that you would want to bring back? Something that you've noticed in England, business-wise, that they do that you think us Pakistanis would fare better if we were to do that as well?
I think the HR department in the UK is far more rigid in what it does. I don't think Pakistani companies know what the HR department's for. I mean, I've brought in things that...
Does that have to do with authority, like the power that they've been given there in that country and the lack thereof?
There just seems to be blurred lines between operations, training and HR. And I'm still trying to get my head around it. In the UK, for instance, there's a set of labour laws which exist in Pakistan as well. People may not realise there's a full set of labour laws. Some of them are far more stringent than they are in the UK. But look, a lot of companies don't follow these rules. We do try and follow the labour laws because that's what we're trying to deliver here. But, like for instance, the disciplinary system shouldn't be a negative experience, in my opinion. It should end up with a positive result, even if that means dismissal, i.e. the person knows why they were dismissed and they perhaps won't make those mistakes in their next job. Right. So it's a positive outcome, isn't it? Or if you do give someone a warning, tell them what they did wrong and what you expect of them going forwards so they can think, well, okay. Remember, I was sacked once in my life. I mentioned it earlier on. Did it become negative? No, it didn't. I became very good friends with the person who sacked me. It's not, something negative happening to you doesn't necessarily have to stay negative. Right. So I would say that, English people are far better at accepting something and moving on. And in Pakistan, it tends to be kept a little bit more in their heart, and they won't let it go. Yeah. Mm.
So, lastly, any words of encouragement or any final remarks you would have for Pakistan and people here who might be interested in what c2o is doing and the work that it does?
Look, this company is absolute proof, that Pakistanis can do a job. And no one can tell me that is untrue, right? I believe that. It's in my body, yeah? I think sometimes negative attitudes, stereotypes, themselves. I'm not talking about outsiders thinking, oh, this has to be this way. But you only have to look around this building over the last 7 or 8 years. That with decent guidance, respect is very, very important. Not talking down to people, right? Giving them a fair chance, fair crack of the whip, as we call it. They can achieve stuff. And we have achieved stuff, and we've got lots of different ambitions, you know, which we haven't even gone into yet. Maybe a subject for another future thing, as what we're doing beyond the point of earning. What are we doing? So, you know, I would say to people that Pakistan is a happening place for business. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show. Clearly, the things that you've been through in your life, living in a foreign country, having the connection back to your hometown, Pakistan, building businesses, failing in some and then having tons of successes has clearly benefited you and also the people around you and the way they do business and also go about their personal lives. At least it's done that for me as well. So thank you so much. And thank you, viewers, for watching. And take care. Allah Hafiz.